So it seems like you guys really liked my Apex Legends video because it blew up. And thank you for that, by the way. And so I knew that in order to keep that momentum going, I would have to follow it up with something even bigger and better. Valorant is one of the biggest games that I've enjoyed recently, and so I got to asking, what if instead of releasing in 2019, Riot Games instead made Valorant for the Nintendo 64 all the way back in 1998. Here's what I think that might have looked like. The first thing I worked on was a first-person character controller. For this project, I wanted to create an FPS game that felt similar to GoldenEye, one of my favorite classic N64 titles, but in the world of Valorant. Because aiming on console can be difficult at times, GoldenEye had auto-aim to help you hit your shots on the easier difficulties. And so I created something similar where the gun points to the nearest enemy in sight, making aiming much easier. GoldenEye also allows you to aim manually, and so I added that feature in as well. Once I was happy with that, I created a gun modeled after the Phantom in Valorant, and I began working on the shooting mechanics. For this demo, you play as the character Jett. She has wind-based abilities like throwing clouds that block vision, and an ultimate ability where she throws a bunch of knives. She has other abilities too, but I decided to focus on just the two because they have the most visual impact. After that, I began working on Jett's model, which would appear in the cutscenes, as well as another character, Viper, who would act as the enemies in this demo. This was going to be a single-player experience, and so I gave the Vipers some simple AI to chase you around and shoot at you. And then I began working on various animations to make it look more convincing. My animation skill isn't great, but it gets the job done. After that, I began working on recreating the world of Valorant. I decided to base the demo on the Icebox map in Valorant, which is an Arctic map set in Russia, and I chose it because I had never made an Arctic map before, and so I thought it'd be a fun challenge. I didn't have time to create a super detailed map, but I decided to focus on some key props, such as the shipping containers as well as the green Radianite crates that are common throughout the game. Making the map was pretty time consuming and honestly not very fun, but eventually I got it done, and so I began working on other smaller details like blood splatter and sound effects. In Valorant, the goal is to plant a device called a spike in a specific location and then detonate it. For my demo, I took inspiration from that and turned it into a simple two-part mission where you first have to find the spike and then plant it in the designated area. Once I had that done, I had the basic structure of the game complete, and so I moved on to making it look more retro. The first thing I worked on was the lighting. These days, most games use something called per pixel lighting that calculates how light or dark each individual pixel on your screen should be. On the other hand, the N64 used an older, less resource-intensive lighting technique called per vertex lighting, which calculates light values based on the polygons of the 3D models instead of every single pixel, giving less realistic results. When it comes to lighting up maps, you have two different kinds of light. First, you have ambient light, which is responsible for evenly lighting up the entire map with a base level of brightness. And second, you have directional light, which is responsible for creating highlights and shadows. These days, ambient light is done with high-definition sky textures that aim to mimic the subtleties of real light as closely as possible. But to get the N64 look, I had to get rid of the HD sky texture I was using and light up the map with a single monochrome light instead. And this change helped make the game start to look more retro. After that, I created my own low-definition sky texture, which is purely decorational and doesn't contribute any extra light to the scene, as well as a single directional light to add a bit of shadows. Next, I lowered the resolution of the game to 240p, which most N64 games used, and this made the game look very pixelated. To compensate for this, the N64 used something called anti-aliasing, which smooths out the transition between different colored pixels in order to reduce the appearance of jagged lines. This, combined with texture filtering, is the reason why N64 games tended to look blurry compared to the sharp and jagged look of PS1 games, which didn't support those features. Another difference is that the N64 didn't suffer from wobbly textures like the PS1 did. And this just comes down to the N64 being more powerful than the PS1 and being able to do the math required to keep textures consistent. After that, I changed the aspect ratio of the game to 4:3, I made animations and cutscenes for Jett, and then I finished things off with a more polished user interface. And with that out of the way, I had a finished demo. And just like my Apex demo, I unfortunately won't be releasing this game to the public, especially since I used actual in-game sounds and voice lines to make the demo, but hopefully you enjoyed watching the gameplay and getting a look at the process behind making it. I might do a few more things with the Jet and Viper models just because I spent so much time making them, but I'll mostly be focusing my efforts on the next retro remake project. I'm having a lot of fun making these things and you guys seem to be enjoying them as well, so if you have any concepts for future retro remake videos, let me know in the comments below since I'd love to have more ideas. Anyways, thanks for watching, like, subscribe, bell, social media links down below, and as always, have a nice day.